stream. I think we're on air, Tommy, but I'm not sure. But maybe we should start. Or should we wait for the voice to come in from the producer to say we're live? Are we live?
Let's go.
Now?
Yep, they're live.
Fantastic. Tommy Fitzpatrick joining me all the way from Charlotte. How are you?
I'm doing good, Gary. Early morning, but doing good.
It's right at 7 a.m. My goodness, what you do for the cause. I guess it's these compromising photographs that I still have. They work wonders over the years, don't they?
Yeah, well, let's not throw them out there today, no.
No, I thought I'd get it out early, though. You know what they say about rugby players. They get the retaliation in first. So I'm just marking your cards for the show. So you're a year. My goodness, you only reminded me. You're a year as managing director of Datacentre services in the United States from Ireland. And what a year it must have been.
Yeah, it's incredible on all different facets, Gary, I was being honest, you know, from a personal point of view, you know, from a work point of view. And thankfully, you know, both contributing parts of the company and my family have been really great advocates of this change, which is great because hitting the ground running is really, really important, you know.
And Charlotte, I've flown in and out of it a few times. I might have even lost a bag or two in transit. But when one compares it to Dublin, could one have a different, you know, what is it compared?
Couple of things actually, like in terms of population, similar in size, right? So around like you know, just over 1 million people. The climate's a bit different, as you can imagine, which is good, and bad in many ways, you know, because you've got like over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm talking in American now, not Celsius anymore, for a certain amount of time, during the summer months. But you know, it's a transient community as well, right? So a little bit like Dublin, you've got a lot of people coming in with professional services companies, banks. I just keep on telling everybody it's the data center capital of the world now, and it'll have to land sometime, you know. But the one thing that really I find about the people here actually is there's a commitment to doing the right thing. So when they say they'll be there, they'll be there. When they say they'll introduce you, they'll introduce you. And a little bit like Dublin, and you know yourself, Garry, your network is everything, right? So if you stand true to the people, it's like the cooperation that you have in hosting Ireland. If you stand side by side with people, your network is everything.
And it's one of the things, I mean, you know, you were such a great advocate of the Host in Ireland concept from the off and networking in the community. But, you know, you can drive 3 hours and you're the other side of Ireland, or drive 3 hours that way or that way. I guess one of the things we forget about, really interesting, you drive 3 hours and you're only actually out of your own driveway probably at this stage, Tommy, are you? It's huge. The scale must be...
Yeah, so having moved from Sandymount, when you go out the back door and 100 meters, you're on the beach. Now, we all know you probably want to be wearing woolies to go on the beach down in Sandymount, but you drive 3 hours, you can't hit the beach, right? So that's something. So that's one of the things that's a little bit alien to me. You know, growing up in Dublin, I think you've got rivers, you've got mountains, you've got the sea, and the sea is a big draw for me, actually. I do love the walking down the beach with the dogs, etc., etc. But the scale up here is incredible. You know, you've got you know, a meeting to go to. You know, Seattle is a 6-hour flight. You know, Atlanta, next city across, really, of a major data center point of view. On the map, it looks like not an inch away, but it's a 4.5-hour drive, or, you know, 7 hours to Loudoun County, which on the map, it looks, yeah, I'll drive there tomorrow. You know, it's not jump on the M50 and go around and pop into Digital or Tree or, you know, any big clients that we have in Ireland, you know.
And do you drive? Is that like we're meeting up in a couple of weeks in Loudoun County? Would you take on a 7-hour drive? Is that something people do?
Yeah, I think 5.5 hours is something that would be very, very common. Like that sort of drive would be, my eldest daughter, she's playing hockey over here. And it's kind of like an elite level. So you go around to various teams, but you could be down in Virginia, it's fairly common to spend weekends traveling for sport.
So going down to Leitrim and Longford and up to Louth is sort of just, you're only in first gear, really, I guess, compared to.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously I have to be careful, but what would you want to go to Leitrim for, Garry?
This is a family show. And we don't want to alienate 90% of the people. Leitrim people, if you're listening, all 5 of you, you're very welcome.
No, I do say it in jest, but it's very common here for anybody, even at the age of 16, having cars, right? So ironically, I failed my driving test first time around because one of the questions was, if you drive along the car and it breaks down, do you put a white flag on the back of your car? Do you put on your hazard lights, or do you walk on the pavement? Like get out of the car and walk on the pavement. So I assumed, you walk on the pavement. That's a safe thing to do, but the pavement is actually the road over here. So I've got a lot of terminology that's like the mad Irishman's going to walk down the road.
Of course, as you do. But it's interesting, and it brings us on to another question. So had you known in advance that you'd have to go and get a new driving permit? And were there any other little things like that oh yeah, I'll see you on Monday, and then you realized, oh man, I don't have a driving license?
So it depends on the state. So North Carolina is one of the ones that you have to have your driving license. You can't go, I think, more than 18 months without it. You sit in your test. But some of the cars that we were looking to buy Tesla as an example, and you can't buy a Tesla without having your actual driver's license in state. So which is I don't know, it's quite bizarre to me, but I mean it's a good way in their own mind of protecting the best interest.
Right, and I guess that's one of the things that we have is that with that scale that we have in Ireland, is that we don't have like a municipality, a county, a state, and a federal sort of layers of an onion of all different layers of stuff. So you get a driving license, guess what? It's the same for north, south, east, and west.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, like generally, nobody has manual cars over here. It's all automatic. And you can imagine why. If you're going to drive for 5 hours,
it's not called
automatic.
It's called what? Standard shift or something, is it?
Stick shift.
Again, it's a family show, so we won't go into that. But you're not a single man. You have a family. You decided that this was it. You were going over, and your whole gang were coming with you. For anybody listening that might have be looking at opportunities to relocate with the whole gang and the family and young kids, as you said, what would you do? What was great and what was not so great? Because you and I spoke many times, and if the kids and wife are happy, even in Ireland, it gives you a better chance of being happy, right?
Yeah, I mean, Garry, you know me personally, right? So I this is my my second marriage, so I've 3 boys from the first one, and they're all, applying the trade, actually, all in the electrical trade, right? Which is great, but we came in a year that it was the right time, for Sinead and the 2 girls, one going into middle school, one going into elementary school, right? Which is like junior infants and, like that more high school sort of thing. So right time then, and they settled in really well. One of the contributing factors, I think, was that everybody was sitting just at the back end of COVID. So we came here in this time last year. So schools hadn't really got back in. The girls were doing remote learning. I think if they had been in school or kind of more lockdown where sports was still locked down, it would have been harder to make that transition, because there's just that real, touchy emotional attachment that's, moving different countries is quite hard to do. And then what's because I hadn't really seen the boys. I went back this year to see the boys. Unfortunately, my father passed away, but it was great to see my sons again. After like 9 months of not seeing them, which is really like that's the emotional part of the whole piece. Is like I'm a very people-centric person, right? So that really meant a lot to me to meet them. But in going back to your question around, coming out here, I think you've got to be comfortable in your ability to network, right? You've got to be comfortable in your ability to put yourself out there and be vulnerable, and ask a lot of people, because if you don't do that, or be comfortable in your own circumstances. So I can sit at home and, watch some football on the TV, sit in the house, have a few beers, whatever.
Sorry, is that soccer you're watching? Or is it American football?
No, it's it's our football, but soccer over here. But I mean, going back to the question, I think it's really important that for people looking to make that transition, you've got to really sit down and think, are you going to put in the hard yards to get yourself in a network?
Yeah. And particularly if you're of a certain level in a certain organization where a lot of that hard yards networking is done for you nearly, because people are bringing people to you. You find yourself, to your point, vulnerable. Well, I don't know anybody here, so I'm actually going to have to go down to the equivalent GAA club. Or the local club, or your kids are sporting. You're very sporty. Are they playing? Does that help? It drags you into the community via the children as well?
Yeah, you like it. Well, better than anybody. You've got different circles of friends. You've got friends from like I'm playing football over here, right? So every Sunday I go playing. So I've got crew there. I've got neighbours. You've got people from work. And you've got to keep that balance, haven't you? So that is really important, I think, in keeping the sanity of yourself as well, right? Because like thankfully I'm only 5 hours out in terms of time zones. If I had moved West Coast and 8 hours out, kind of makes it hard to make that connective tissue back into friends at home. We just sit on WhatsApp messaging yesterday, etc.
Yeah. But sport, as we always talk about, is a great catalyst, because you don't actually have to know a person to really appreciate them as a teammate, which leads into the bar after, which leads into a barbecue, which leads into like kids the same age. It's not finding the catalyst to meet in the first place, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit different here, maybe because I'm in Charlotte, than if I had been like in, one of the like upstate New York or somewhere like that. You probably would network different, but a lot of it is going to family homes, having barbecues, or it's not the same as you can imagine back home, where every fourth or fifth place is a bar, and that's becomes the center of all good and all evil, where you sort all your problems out.
Well, in fairness, you don't need a bar, and I have to ask you to show us your little coffee cup, which is just such an Irish thing. Such an Irish thing. I mean, you're meant to be drinking coffee in a coffee cup, not a Guinness cup. Goodness.
It's an espresso cup.
An espresso
bought here in the US.
So let's talk a bit about Tommy the professional for a second. So not in a million years, or maybe in a million years, I'm preempting. You're an apprentice, electrical apprentice, AIB, would I be right?
Yeah, well, for contractors that used to do work for AIB, so I would have done work in Mountjoy Prison, Wheatfield, James Connolly Memorial Hospital. So a lot of diverse backgrounds. But the contractor
I thought when you said you used to be in prison, I actually thought you were in prison. So you're actually just working there.
That's what the haircut is for.
I thought that. Well, thank you for clarifying that. I actually thought that. Listen, the mistakes we made. So to go from that and work through the system, and now I know it's a great title, and you'll tell us a bit more about it, but effectively a North American managing director of Datacentre services. It's even the title you'd want a big business card for. So you know, I mean, I think that what I'd like to talk to you about is that there's a certain level, in my opinion, still of snobbery around the whole word apprenticeship. And there was always that whole thing as, oh, I want to be the first in the family going to university and stuff. How much did it matter? How much does it matter? And you're where you are and you did what you did. So, I mean, apprenticeships are so important, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's about the individual, right? I really think, you know, you take a STEM type solution where you're going into that apprenticeship mode. It's for certain people, right? Although some people may challenge me around this one, I felt I did work hard and, you know, put in the hard yards to make it work. And going back to the sports analogy, it was like you had to do the training in order to, you know, be able to walk across the white line on a Saturday or Sunday, whatever you played. Where people, you know, certain people are just really right for doing that academic route. It just wasn't for me, right? And there's no right or wrong around that one. But what I would say is that, you know, parking title aside, you've got to have a really high moral compass, I feel, to be in the positions that we are at senior level, because you cast a big shadow, right? You genuinely cast a big shadow, Gary, and you've got to be an ambassador for what you do and make sure people feel that they're on the journey, you know, because the sort of industry we're in, as we know, you know, it keeps the stock exchange going, it keeps planes in the air, you know, all this sort of the other things that when we walked into the pandemic, it was quite we really understood the value of what our ecosystem did.
Well, do you know, we can never say it enough, because I think that part of the challenge that the industry has is it's done the SaaS people and the software people have done such a great job of selling the concept of the cloud, that the actual automatic connection with the physical nature of data centers is lost. And therefore we can never say it enough. To your point, the pandemic, there was a lot of people squeaky bum on the 17th of March 2020 because it was going to be the savior. Now, I think the word that we hear an awful lot more is essential workers. That the digital infrastructure people are seen as essential workers at the same level, maybe as other utilities. Would it be? Is that what you're finding as well?
Yeah, and I think, you know, that it's that dynamic there where you look at both facets of our business, right? You've got the mechanical, electrical, but you've also got that IT technology services part of the business, right? And you've got to build that core competence, right? So you think of our business where we have, you know, 3,000 or 4,000 people working in data centers every single day. You don't just inherit that skill set. You've got to build a mechanism that starts from apprenticeships, you know, and they could be, it doesn't have to be conventionally mechanical or electrical. It could be IT, it could be an intern program, but we've got to build within in order to keep that sustainable workforce. Because, you know, if you look even for the people on the call, you know, myself and yourself, you know, you start moving into that, you know, 50, 60 years of age, you know, we then become
you're not
a commodity. That's fine.
You still have a 4 in your age, don't you?
I'm hanging closely, like really closely.
Really? I thought you were Benjamin Button. I thought you went the opposite way, because when we met way back, we looked about ish, and I'm getting older looking, and you're sort of getting younger looking. It's this maneuvering of that moustache and the beard and the whole thing that's going on. I've nothing to work with, I'm afraid. But you're right. Getting back to your point, and something that you often used to say to me is, you can have the best engineers in the world, but if they don't understand why they're doing what they're doing, it can be very tiring. The why.
Yeah, and you know, you think about that model, you know, it's about empowerment, it's about ownership, it's about accountability, because in the middle of the night, that person that's standing in front of a switch, whether it's a network switch or a UPS, has to have the competence and the confidence to be able to know what to do. And that's what we're here to do. Like, it's not like a lot of people can, you know, run and operate businesses and data centers in an efficient way, but it's about the ability when an incident happens to having the right people doing the right thing.
You know, you've just reminded me of a comment that I heard once from an astronaut, and it took me a long time to get my head around it, but he said, we train in general a month on the ground for an hour in the air. And what we are doing is we're training for failure. And I couldn't understand it, Tommy. I couldn't understand it. But what he actually meant is when everything goes fine, we're all fine. But what we're training for is to know what to do when it doesn't go fine.
Yeah.
Because I guess their stakes are when you're up there and you're looking down. And actually, the term of reference they gave was the first landing on the moon, that the telescopes and stuff weren't strong enough for us to see exactly the spot. So when the guys went to land, they were going to land on boulders. So that moment with 15 seconds of fuel, they switched on to manual immediately.
Yep.
And landed. And he said that's what all of our training was for.
Yeah, and we're somewhat similar, Gary. Like we manifested our training and built it out of global aviation best practice, and then we brought clinical psychologists in to drive that human behavioral part of it, right? So that's a really, really important part of our DNA as a business.
Right, aviation. I don't like to think too much about planes. Funny enough, I don't mind them. I don't mind traveling in them. But when somebody tells you that actually it's the headwind that lifts you, not the tailwind, it's way past my ability to understand. But it's true. And I like what you talk about a lot. And I like the fact that you as a person and a company, you look at other traditional industries to learn from their best practices, to learn from what they didn't do so well. Because don't you get a sense sometimes that people feel this is the first industry that ever had a mission critical status? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that I know and I appreciate more than anybody the data is the steam of this industrial age, but there are so many other industries that have had best practices and stuff, and even the aviation industry. You know,
Yeah.
for the amount of planes.
But I mean that kind of goes back to, Gary, that, you know, competence and confidence. So you could be the most competent person, but not have the confidence to press the switch, or not have the confidence to push back and say, I'm not doing that. And that's a really, really, you know, in terms of, you think about hierarchy in businesses, right? If you don't, you know, deliver accountability and ownership to people, they won't have the confidence to you know, to say to their manager or, you know, their peer, stop. And that's how incidents and accidents happen.
Right. And one of the other things that I find with really, really good senior people like yourself is something that now we have a label for, isn't it? Emotional intelligence. I don't think we had a label for it up to maybe 5 years ago. We probably call it cop on, would we? Yeah,
clip around the neck.
Yeah, but it was the same in the dressing room. You know, you didn't have to like everybody in the dressing room before a match, but you all had to appreciate each other because you were going out to score goals. And that's emotional intelligence, to know not to call them out for, I don't like where you live or whatever. We're there for a task. We're there for a job. Do you find that when you deal with either, God, I don't know how many categories there are now. Is there Z-Genners, Zoomers, Boomers? You know, what's the catalyst that you use on all the different generations to get them aligned? Because media would have you, we're all totally different.
Yeah. I mean, I think our, let me say, our model is all about 5 nines uptime, making sure that's, you know, we keep the whole data center, you know, operating, right? But then you've got so many different component parts of our model in terms of owning it from design stage through operational mode into, you know, full life cycle replacement, right? So you've got all of this going on. You look at capital refresh programs now, in the IT system, especially at hyperscale level now, it's every 3 years. So you've got all of this going on, and you've got to keep, you know, the lights on as such, right? So you've got a lot of movement dynamics. And you've got to look, I think, at our entire team. And once you give kind of clear direction, that communication piece is so important, right? So you get yourself in the room, you succinctly articulate what we want to achieve, and that kind of, not in a fluffy way, the strategy, but actually what we need to do to make sure that we're, you know, delivering on task and delivering on the ask of our clients. So I think generations, there may be subtleties in how you communicate, but I think the one vision is all about the outputs for the client.
Yeah.
And that might seem a little bit funny, Gary, but like I'm a generalist, right? So I come, as you said, from an electrical background. I'm a generalist. I want to get good people around me that, you know, can drive the business forward. And I think that's what makes, you know, us successful, is having the right people doing the right thing. And you're looking not at the competency that's on the CV, but actually the behaviors that sit behind it, and then behaviors are key.
Isn't that so true? Isn't that so true? And I think that's what I mean also when I go back to the CV that maybe a while ago it was about sort of master's degrees and degrees in this and degrees in that. You know, a degree in common sense can often be exactly what the team needs. A person that is a team player and has a degree in common sense, great. Yeah. Whereas if you look at, I guess, everybody from a academic perspective, you can often miss the real gems. And that's what it takes to build a really great team, is you're trying to fit, aren't you? You're trying to fit the team fit for purpose to win the league. You don't need to have Ronaldo to win the League of Ireland. You know, yeah. You need other skills and you need other services. That's no disrespect to the League of Ireland, of course. You know. No,
I get it. I mean, like I've still got, you know, it's ironic you talk about distances, but I've got friends that back home in Ireland that we would have lived 4 miles apart. So back then, 4 miles was, you know, when you had one family, car, etc. That was like, you may as well be the other side of the world. But like football was the normalizer for me in that sort of place where you played with Belvo or Kevin's, or, you know, played up in Home Farm, like even the mini leagues. I still have friends from then. But when you think about what that's like now, it's quite different. It's a different thing. But when you talked about getting onto the pitch and knowing, you know, that the person you stand beside has a job to do, I may not like them. So you play, you know, you win, you lose, you celebrate, or you kind of, you know, bow your head. And on the Tuesday night when you're training, that's that one person that you kick lumps out of, because you just take that, I don't really like you at any sort of level, but you know that you just, that's the way it happens.
And those analogies, for those that don't play sport, sometimes they can bore them, but I've carried it all the way through. Can't kick a ball, kill myself anymore. But I love the Tuesday nights. I love the Thursday nights. I love the camaraderie and all the rest. So we have a couple of minutes to go, Tommy, and I know we could talk for a long time. So you're back on here in 24 months, 2 years. What's Tommy doing? What's your news story? What are you reflecting on success when you're 3 years in the US?
Yeah, there's a couple of measures for success, right? Is that, you know, maybe Tommy's redundant at that stage, that, you know, you've got the right level of succession in the business is at the right level. The one thing I'm really happy about where I am now is actually the business has backed me. They've invested in trying to develop the right structure for the marketplace and taken, you know, my guidance about what we need to do to evolve, right? So we've invested heavily to deliver, you know, what we call the full facets of a data center life cycle. So that maturity would have us at, you know, doing that technical services, IT, mechanical, electrical, our project business, and the consultancy part, right? So you've got just that whole maturity around the business. That's what success will look like. But you know, we've geographically put people in the right areas, you know, the Louth counties, the northeast, the west coast, through an investment strategy. And I'd love to just see in 4 years' time the evolution of, you know, how the business will flourish, right? So that's not a personal Tommy thing, right? But actually, my success is built on the success of the business.
And I'll finish with this. The fact that you were able to leave Europe, Ireland, and it continues to be so successful. I guess you and what you'd probably done what you needed to do, and now you needed to do it somewhere else. So it's testimony to the fact that Europe is still flying for CBRE data centers, as is North America. Look, it's been fun. We've mixed up a lot of stuff there. I didn't have to go into the depths of our Saturday nights back in the day, which is helpful.
Yeah, not mention of any.
We won't mention the burger joint down on Leeson Street, but Tommy Fitzpatrick, Managing Director of CBRE Data Centers North America, and excellent junior cup winner numerous times. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks, Garry.